Hi, this session we're going to have a look at iterative development and what it actually means. It's a very simple technique which is nowadays being labelled as an agile technique. I'm not sure I technically agree with that, but that's fine. But what's happened is over the years people have worked out that there are some mechanisms, some approaches that work very well. Now it's usually linked to software development, but that isn't the only case. I think when you've been through this session, hopefully begin to understand there are other areas, in fact very broad areas, where this particular approach can work. One other thing that's been mooted around is that, well, if we've got a full spec and a full design of what we need to build, why would I use iterative development to do that? But the simple answer is this. Iterative development is taking an element, a requirement, initially right down at the root end, a product, a requirement, feature, whatever you're building, and taking a step-by-step approach. Okay? This is the key of iterative development. We do it by iterations, a step at a time. I mean, look, I've talked about this in other sessions, looking at projects in general. Everything is a step at a time. Even, trying to grow as a baby, we have to learn how to, look out of our pram, get out and look around our environment, crawl around the floor. We have to crawl before we can walk, really, and walk before we can run. But it's like everything else. We need to do everything at a step at a time. And this really is a good application, a good approach to take in building solutions through project or even through normal delivery. Remember, Scrum uses the core of iterative development, or the iterative development is the core of what it works in building the solutions we're putting in place. Now remember, it doesn't work everywhere. But what is important to understand is, where do I need it? Where does it make use for me? And it's taking the build and taking through a step at a time. And one of the good advantages of this is that we can get the business involved and make sure they understand how the solution is building. So going back to the point about having full spec or a full design in place, still turn around and say, okay, look, what we'll do is we'll put a little bit together to start with and see how you think about that. And make sure we're on the right track and it's what you really want. Because businesses always have an idea what they think they want, but that isn't necessarily always the case. And anyway, it gives them an opportunity to have a rethink once they start seeing it down in reality. Things like models and prototypes are a great technique to use as well, always through projects anyway. Wherever you can put something together, cardboard cutouts, matchstick men, wireframes, it doesn't matter. Molds, anything that will help you to see. Look, architects use this all the time, use modeling all the time. We'll go through that in more detail in another session anyway. But iterative development, take a step at a time. So each spiral here is building part of the solution, getting a review on it, and then taking that part into the next part of it and building a bit more on top of what's already been agreed. One of the best things about this is that if there needs to be a change in something, while we're still building that particular product or requirement, we can do that whilst we're still building it, right? And this rather knocks the waterfall attitude on the head too, because usually the idea, if you build everything, bolt it together and test it at the end of the project, and then all hell breaks loose because things don't work together, it's not what they want, the usual scenario. So let's try and avoid that. Build it as we go along, check that we're getting the right build and it looks what the business want, allow them to have change go through. Remember, one of the elements, one of the characteristics of projects is change. That means we need to really incorporate change within the project itself too. Because at the end of the day, we want to make sure to have a successful project, we end up with the right solution that delivers the benefits that the business want out of this. At the right cost, of course, so the return on their investment doesn't get impacted either. So let's build it as we go along. We have all sorts of mechanisms like time boxes, work packages, prioritization to help us control the build of the solution. Remember, we do only estimate. And that's the other thing. We're not sure how long it's going to take. So let's get that in place as well, estimations. All these elements are covered in different sessions if you want to add them together. But the key thing about iterative development, take it a step at a time, build it, allow things to change if necessary while you're still building the solution. Now this is down at product level, requirement features, same thing really. Right? But at the end of the day, we can also take this to the sub level too, a sub deployment level, or an increment release, whatever it happens to be that you're doing. Bolt a few requirements together, like a high view of the home page at the moment, or a layout of the new process or application document you're putting together, for instance. Put that in place, see how they like that, and then you can add things to it as you go along. Right? So we'll look at the different types of iterative approaches we can take anyway in a moment. But key thing is taking this spiral view forward, and we evolve the solution. So we're going to evolve the solution as we progress through the time frame that we've given it, that we've estimated for it. Now, there are all sorts of different ways of doing that. There's a good website called allaboutlean.com that has all the different views of different like PDSA, PDCA, ODCPA, and there's a load of them linked with it. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I'm going to look at a couple of the main ones that are about at the moment. And I think one of the most common ones that we've always seen is the plan, the do, used to be check, Deming, this is the Deming model, by the way, you'll probably recognize that. Change this to study, but at the end of the day, we'll have a look at what that really means, and then act, right? So this is the PDCA model, which usually goes in a loop like this, and it's split up into quarters, like a bit of a pizza, really. Doing that loop, and we use the plan, do, the check, or study if you like, and then act. So each one of these cycles in a 360-degree cycle is a loop here. Right. Now, the titles are interesting, but like everything else, like with the project life cycle, the titles are to give you an idea of what's actually happening, to represent what is supposed to be happening in that particular time frame. Okay, so here we need to plan what we're going to do the work, right? Check that it's working, and then act on it, or just dispose of it, whatever it happens to be, and then do this until we're completely happy with the solution, and then sign off that particular requirement. Okay, so that's one way of looking at it. DSDM used to have in their older version a similar thing. One was called identify. Then we had plan, right? So it's just taking a slightly different shift on it. Then we will evolve the requirements, and then review that. So the principle's still the same at the end of the day. Their solution went this way round, and it would look like this way, right? So we had the identify, plan, evolve, and review cycle. Okay, but at the end of the day, which way round, clockwise, anti-clockwise, it doesn't really matter. What you're doing really is looking at the solution and then looking to decide, putting that plan in place and acting on it, and then having a look and see what you've built. That's been revised. This was the old DSDM in their first version of their Agile PM. The new version they have now is with conversation. Let's have a look at what we've got here and understand what the requirement is at this point. We then put that thought, really like plan. So we put some thought in place, action that plan, and then we go back into conversation. So to a certain extent, the first cycle starts with conversation, thought, plan, if you like, action that, build the requirement through the first loop, and then go back and have a look, in which case now we're back into a review type process, or activity, what do you want, right? So these are just some of the elements that are out. But what it's really saying is, let's have a look at what we've got here at this particular point in time with this product, requirements, put a bit together, go back to the business, or whoever is going to have a look and check and say, yeah, that looks pretty good so far. It's working functionally. So always a good idea to test. So in the action is always a test process. Test it, make sure it functions from the build point of view. Go to whoever's going to do the review for you, have a look and see how they like them apples so far. If it's good, get on and do through the next iteration. If you want any changes, this is brilliant because we can put that change into place. Yeah, it may have an impact on the overall time frame to deliver that. So if you've estimated 3 days, it may take 3.5. But remember, we do have a contingency to help us with that now, and that is on the coulds, or the ones that are not so necessary to the solution within that particular time frame, time box. Right? Remember, time box is generic. We'll look at time boxes a bit later. Right? But what we're doing is using the time box to control the iterative process. Otherwise, you can probably guess it could go on and on. But we say, no, we've got a time limit with the work we've put into that time frame, the time box. It's going to shut down at that point. If we do run out of time, we look at the critical elements, the ones we must deliver within that time box, and we'll take elements out of it. This is the core of a sprint in Scrum. It's the core of the DSDM solution development time box in Agile PM. It's the core of all iterative development, right? And that's really the most practical approach to take. And this is where iterative development works. And it's been going on, we've been using it for many, many years. The Deming model has been around for a larger number of years. Variations of that have been around since the 60s from NASA point of view. But it's a very useful technique to take place to help you build a solution. It technically pops up into increment level in the same thing with subroutines or sub-deliveries, subsets of work you're putting out there, deploying at that point. So again, it's all the same process, just at a higher level, right? So there's no real shift. We've been using this for many, many years in projects to build the solution because nobody knows for certain what it's going to look like. To give everybody the opportunity to put that in place, put the change in place and control the delivery time frame using time boxes and elements like that, techniques like that. So hopefully that's put a bit more of a perspective on iterative development.